Hi, I'm Tim Zacharias with Cougar USA and your host of Building Value. My guest today is Will Morefield, Vice President of Operations from Northside Electric Motors. Will, welcome to the show.
Hi, Tim. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. Well, really looking forward to this episode. Will and I are going to be talking about his background and how Northside got its start and how he kind of got into the industry. We're also going to be talking about pump and motor repair in general and some things to look out for in the field, some ways to kind of avoid some early wear and tear on equipment. And we're also going to be talking about how Cougar and Northside work together to better serve our customers. On Building Value, we go behind the scenes of building operations to showcase the people and products that make buildings work and the value they bring to the community. So tell me a little bit about where you grew up.
I grew up here locally, Richmond, Texas, Houston area, just south of Sugar Land, and just lived in the area my whole life. Went to school at A&M, so I've never been too far away for too long.
Yeah. So what did you end up doing? And obviously we met in college, and had a little bit of fun there. But what did you end up doing after college?
I came straight to work here at Northside Electric Motors. Been working here my whole life since I was 16, and so everything was kind of set to kind of gear me towards coming back here to take the reins and or at least learn up and eventually take the reins.
Nice. So when you went off to A&M, you already had the idea that you were going to come back and go straight into the family business?
Definitely.
Nice.
Yeah, I probably decided, I don't know, about halfway through high school maybe that you know what, it'd be, crazy not to at least give it a go. Always do something different, figure if it doesn't work out, but it'd be pretty smart to kind of step right into family business and, give it a shot.
Nice. Yeah, my dad and Scott started Cougar when I was already at college, and so when I graduated, it wasn't necessarily my first thought. So, had a little jaunt in the corporate world, realized pretty quickly that wasn't for me, and kind of came back to the family business life.
Yeah, I was thinking you stepped right in, but I forgot that you had done something else.
Yeah, and I think it all worked out pretty well, the timing, and I learned a few things, being able to go off and be in a distribution company, things like that. It worked out pretty well, but I also didn't go into college with the idea of going to work there, so it probably would have been an industrial distribution major.
Yeah.
Had I done that. But so how did your dad get into this business? How did y'all get started with Northside?
Yeah, he just happened to live next door to a guy that decided he was going to go to California and be an extreme sports junkie. And my dad was recently sold the business that he had started with his buddies from college, and so was looking for work and said, "Hey man, why don't you sell me that business you got over there?" The guy's like, "You're not gonna like this. It's kind of nasty." And he said, "Man, I got to do something." And there you go. And then he took over from there, and a guy took off to California, and that was that.
How long ago was that?
1983.
Oh wow.
Or 1984.
Nice. So yeah, been in the Morefield family for a while.
Yeah.
And you got in at 16. Just put you to work out in the shop or what?
Yeah, started off, small jobs, cleaning the shop, cleaning parts, just kind of doing, kind of some maintenance kind of stuff. And then eventually I moved into the winding department so I could start learning how to, wind motors, kind of learn the technical information there as far as how you strip a motor, take the data, put back in it what you got out of it, and, make sure that it runs the same way that it used to before. So just worked in the winding department probably, I guess, all the way through college. No, through high school, and then college started in sales, just kind of regular sales desk, answering phones, handling, counter sales, walk-in customers, that sort of thing. And then after college, then kind of more into a kind of a sales manager position, and and then. I guess about 2015, I ended up as the shop foreman. So that role opened up, and so I decided to, that'd be really good to kind of get even more, technical, knowledge, from assembly and troubleshooting standpoint, how the process really kind of comes together from start to finish.
Sure.
And so that just tripled, or more my understanding of the whole process from beginning to end, just down to the finest detail, to the, half thousandths of an inch, where something needs to be so that it will go together right and run right and not have an issue.
Yeah, definitely. In talking with you over the years about this stuff, sounds like the margins of error in what you do are
Yeah.
very small. So
Yeah.
I could see how you would need that technical knowledge.
Yeah.
So, you got great shop here. Obviously, a lot going on behind us. But can you just give us give me a little bit of an overview of what Northside Electric Motors does, and what all you offer?
Sure. The I guess so we started off just motors only, back in the '60s, and and then it wasn't until my dad took over that we started branching out from motors only to motors with pumps, motors with complete kind of assemblies, whether it be a gearbox, a blower, a pump, or whatever a motor could be mounted to.
Sure.
Rotating equipment is kind of the quote unquote phrase that's kicked around, is so if it rotates, we can fix it, is kind of our common motto that we go to now. So we have a good working knowledge of how those additional components affect the motor, how the motor affects it, and how they should go together as an assembly and perform in the installation so that the customer has a good finished product.
Yeah, and I imagine that's similar to kind of our approach with the water control systems for us, not just focusing on that pump, but how it kind of performs in the entire system, and helping you troubleshoot issues that might be related to that pump, but affect the entire system. So
yeah,
I could see how that's definitely a good approach.
Well, definitely, like you've seen that a lot of that is driven from the more a lot of times it's the customers kind of depending on you to know more. The more you can help them. A lot of times, especially nowadays, it seems like there's a knowledge gap that has to be filled, and the more you can fill that, then the less reliant that customer has to be on third party vendors, or outside contractors, or mechanics or millwrights. Sure. They can just kind of work just between you and them, get the problem solved, and go on down the road.
Absolutely. So what kind of markets or industries are y'all typically working in?
I guess, heavy industry, any sort of forging, material handling, a lot of plastics extrusion, anywhere there's manufacturing going on, then there's, you got pumps, motors, gearboxes, blowers that are all behind that, behind the scenes, making the equipment go,
right,
and getting the product out the door.
And fair amount of that here in Houston.
Yes, it's definitely, a lot of people, we hear the term that, Houston is like the motor capital of the world because of, whether from a pump and motor standpoint, from all the municipal opportunities that are out there, from, just the large expanse of the Houston area. There's just, almost an unlimited potential for the market just here in the Houston area.
Absolutely. And, we hear that also about the HVAC systems, that it's the HVAC capital of the world. So I'm sure you have, similar spotlight on you from the motor manufacturers about what's going on in the Houston area with all of these installed base. So
yeah, and that's why it's been a good focus of ours for a long time to be to work directly with all the major motor manufacturers, because that plugs you into as a warranty service center, which a lot of times can get you new customers, as well as you have that you can advertise that, hey, we're qualified to work on this manufacturer's equipment, per the manufacturer. They believe strongly in what we're doing here in our quality control system, so that they can trust the work that we do to duplicate factory assemblies and go right back out the door with the factory warranty and our warranty intact.
Nice. So obviously there's a lot of other kind of pump and motor repair shops in town. What is it about Northside that kind of sets you apart?
I would say, the main thing is we're kind of like a big motor shop in a small motor shop body, in that, there's a lot of small time guys that are just kind of, one man, two man, small, just handful of people that they can't really handle anything big and not qualified to work on a whole lot, but they just do what they can do. Then you have the big motor shops that are your servicing the 4 and 10 figure horsepower, equipment that's here in town. A lot of that's high voltage, 13.6 and 4160. So that's they really concentrate on that market, and there's a lot of kind of fighting for that market share, and we're kind of right there in the middle to where we can handle up to about 3,000 horsepower, but our bread and butter is probably 2,000 horsepower and below, 1,500 horse and below. That's kind of but that covers probably 98% of what is in most facilities.
Sure.
So we can kind of be a one-stop shop from single phase and DC motors, as well as up to several thousand horsepower if need be. So that's kind of so we apply a lot of the quality systems that go into making the big motors go out the door right to small motors. So we have a lot of application engineering that has been gained from working kind of in that in between area where you have to know what you're doing. You have to have people with a background in big motors so that you can have the confidence to properly assess even a low voltage motor.
Gotcha. And I can assure you that 2,000 horsepower and below is going to cover 100% of what's in the commercial market.
Yeah.
I would be shocked if there was anything anywhere close to that in the commercial market. But like you said, having that confidence on the larger motors and applying that to the smaller ones, definitely can see that as an advantage. So, talked about servicing the rotating equipment. What types of repair or warranty work would you say is kind of a typical overhaul for you guys?
Okay, yeah, sure. A typical start with the inspection. The guys go through the parts. They they do kind of an initial assessment of electrical and mechanical checks inside and out, and then as they do those checks, they start to disassemble the motor, and then we just have certain steps of what to inspect next, and then they just kind of work all the way through everything from the bearing journal fits and the housings, the seal fits, and everywhere that there's a mating fit or a rotating fit, you kind of have to assess that. And then from there, depending on if you find an electrical failure or not, you can propose the mechanical and electrical, reconditioning or rewinding as needed. So whether you have to do the winding or not, that's, that just, sometimes it happens. It's, you can have all sorts of failures, as you well know. You can have shorting, from single phasing and overloaded. You can be, overheated. Customer use it wrong. There's, a myriad of infinite number of failures. So, so then, as far as the actual cleaning process, we clean everything up. Everything's prepped so that it goes back together without affecting the overall, the output performance of the unit. Then we're balancing. That's the rotor or fan wheel, fan components. Ratchet assembly. There's anything that rotates with the rotor or the armature. You want to have that all balanced out so that then when you put your new bearings, new grease, everything goes back together the way it ought to. Do final checks for run out. All the fits are stored to factory fits. So just basically just make it like brand new.
Right.
So if the factory would do it, then you want to do that too. So that's
Nice. And you have all those capabilities in-house, right?
yes, yeah. But there's very little we have to farm out. The occasional, rotary bar or trying to think maybe a lamination core restack, which are the kind of things that happen, once or twice in a year. That is that's. But even that is just. It's no big deal. We've got great vendors that we work with on those types of things. But yeah, it's.
And what kind of testing do you do once the overhaul is complete?
Yeah, so then your final mechanical checks, you're checking the fits and the runouts. Make sure if you have a coupling or a pump impeller, that fit is good. It's not too loose. It's not too tight. The key stock is properly cut to length. A lot of times people get into trouble with replacing a full piece of key stock when you really should have what they call a half key. Things that can affect the balance. Those little details go a long way to have a final product that you can rely on.
Nice. So when it leaves the shop, I mean, it's as close to new as it can get.
Yeah. We do a
Basically.
test run. Everything gets a final test run, full voltage, no load. We have, we know what those no load amps are supposed to be, so we can associate those. No different than a load test. A lot of times you get that question. Hey man, you guys do load testing over there? Well, we don't do load testing here. That's another thing we don't do here. But it's a common misconception to think that you need a load test to verify that the repair was done properly, and you don't. If you have your surge test, megger test, high pot test, if you've passed all your electrical tests, you've passed all your mechanical inspections, the no load amps will be a certain portion of the full load amps. Depending on the base speed, you'll know if it's too high, if it's too low. Those are your red flags that, okay, maybe we made a mistake in the winding department, or hey, this is a factory winding. Maybe we need to reach out to the manufacturer and find out why this isn't testing the way we think it ought to. But so there's a few questions that can be asked if you see something that's not right. But certainly, like I say, when it goes out the door, you can have full confidence it's going to be ready to go.
Nice. And you also do some sales of new motors too, right?
We do. We supply a number of NEMA frame motors. To be the horizontal, typical horizontal mount motor or vertical mount motor. We have inventory up to 300 horsepower on the vertical hollow shafts, which is common. From 300 horse down is common in the municipal well water industry, and then the 100 horsepower and on down for the horizontal, lineup. So we have a good. We have Toshiba, U.S., Siemens. It's Baldor's right around the corner. So all the major brands. There's about a half a dozen to a dozen of the kind of the big time players that people would consider a known, reputable brand. Those typically come with a 3-year warranty. Repairs will be anywhere from a 1 to 3 year warranty, depending on what the customer's requiring. And then we could offer a quality system that gives them that warranty that they need.
So what's another kind of common mistake that you see, or an issue that kind of results in some other failures?
Sure. It's common for people to try to improve their reliability and their uptime by having a spare parts, spare motors, spare pumps, nuts, bolts. As any facility that's trying to stay up and running would try to do. So so they'll buy these key pieces of equipment, key spares, critical spares, if you will, and they'll have them in their warehouse, but they're commonly not properly maintained. There again, kind of, there'll be some OEM specifications and guidelines as to what needs to happen for equipment, especially rotating equipment. You typically have to, rotate the shaft on a monthly basis. You have to grease it or change the oil annually. Some motors require, anti-condensation heaters, depending on the type of enclosure they have, or, the size of the motor will dictate that as well. And so you can have all these components on the shelf, but if you forget about how you're supposed to be maintaining them, they can fail on startup. There's another thing we see is if you're not maintaining it, you probably aren't doing electrical checks either. So it's you can pull the motor off the shelf, it could be brand new, but if it's 0 megs, it's going to blow up on startup. So we actually offer storage and maintenance here at Northside Electric. And, we can do those things for you. So, we have 240 and 120 volt heater connections, and then we do the monthly shaft rotations and greasing, and we can report out mega readings, and we can do annual test runs. You can design your own maintenance program depending on, how sensitive or critical a piece of equipment is or what the manufacturer says you ought to be doing. But that's also maintains your warranty, because if you haven't followed the factory guidelines for storage, well, then you won't have a warranty when you go to put it online and you have an issue.
Sure. And, some of that may be I do this myself, headlight goes out of my truck or something like that, and I go buy, I'm like, okay, well, I'm going to buy 2 so I don't have to remember what it was, and I'm going to throw the other one in my glove box. And then 2 years later, when the headlight goes out, I forget that I have that one.
Yeah.
That one's not good anymore. So, because it's been in my truck for 2 years. So
That's right. So cataloging, that's another key component. A lot of people don't invest in a kind of a storage or maintenance software program, but there's a lot of that out there. It's really easy to use, and you can pick something that's as complicated or simple to use as you want. And a lot of our customers use them. A lot of them don't.
Sure.
So it's
yeah, a lot of times it's just easier to have somebody else do that when they're already doing that every day.
Sure.
So yeah, that's we've see some of that where you have some of the spare parts, and definitely a lot of times ends up being can work or like you said can have some issues. So we definitely try to stock a lot of those kind of key spare parts as well, and we don't have as much of the specialty requirements as you do on the motors, but that's a nice additional offering that you guys have.
Sure.
Nice. And I know you guys do a lot of work in facilities that we don't necessarily get involved in, and when we're looking at the commercial market, majority of things that I can think of that we've worked together on have been sump pumps or some of the larger motors off the CRs, things like that. What other applications or kind of pieces of equipment in the commercial space are you dealing with on a regular basis?
Yeah, you commonly see the split case pump or
Sure.
and the pedestal pump, commonly mounted to a skid and then hooked up to the plumbing and headworks. Whether it be for chill water or hot water,
Heating hot water, right?
Yes, sir. And so the other types of pumps you might see are like an in-suction pump. That's real common. You have like
sure,
a JM or JP type frame.
Condenser water or anything like that. Some of the older booster systems are seeing that. But what about like on cooling towers? Are you dealing a lot with the motors and gearboxes and things like that?
Yes, we commonly see motors and gearboxes from cooling towers. They typically have special needs for like on the motor. It's got to be might have to be a totally enclosed air over motor.
Right.
It's more it's got a higher quality of a sealing system, whether it be enclosed end bells, silicone fits, sealed shaft fits, things like that to help it hold up against some moisture. Epoxy paint. We can do those types of conversions here in-house actually as well. So that's something we've done before. The gearboxes, that's more kind of straightforward repair. You got to get new bearings, new seals, change oil, service out fits, housings as needed.
Nice. So what is it that you would say is, if you can even kind of qualify it down to a couple, but maybe some common issues that you see come in or repairs that you guys do that might be things that could be avoided or things that people might be able to look for to kind of see that sort of failure is coming?
Sure. You're probably the number one thing that people can do on site is going to be bearing related. It's we typically see people put off or avoid, because they're trying to keep production up or keep uptime up, and they put off. They hear a squealy bearing, they know it should be greased, but they have to climb way up on top of the machine to do it. And so those things are typically either put off or forgotten about altogether, and then they just wait till the motor fails. And bearing failure, when you let it run to catastrophic failure, often multiplies the repair price by 3 or 4 times. If you wait till that thing seizes up, that means you've got a rotor that's dropped, it's dragged. Now you've got stationary parts and rotating parts that have come stuck together and rubbed each other. So you have to rebuild all of those fits, plus replace the bearings, potentially replace the winding. It's just a mushroom of repairs that when you let it run till mechanical failure.
Gotcha.
So yeah, definitely. We try to reinforce regreasing practices. We can provide a regreasing schedule from the OEM if they need one. But it's typical, kind of what you see for most rotating equipment. It's going to be in that 3 to 12 month range. You're going to need to be adding grease or changing bearing as needed. Typically a bearing is going to be good for 4 to 5 years. Oftentimes, when maintained properly and lubricated regularly, you can well exceed that. It's not uncommon to see something that's well taken care of last 10 or 20 years in service. If they're monitoring it and keeping up with it.
Interesting. It kind of goes back to that. What is it? The ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure, or something like that, right?
100%.
So, what about? Are there any other kind of preventive maintenance practices or anything like that can help extend the life of this equipment?
Yeah, a lot of times it takes a shutdown to do it, but you can do electrical checks. You can check your mega resistance to ground and see if something that's in a highly corrosive or contaminated environment. If the atmosphere is getting at the winding, you'll see the mega reading trend down over time. So if you're checking that annually, or 6 months, or even every few years, if you can do it at all, it's good to do it, because then you can start to trend it. Because if you're going to use, you either have to use your senses or you have to trend things in a measurable way.
Sure.
So you have to qualify. Is it noisier than it was the day before, or did we grease it last month when we were supposed to? If you're doing those things, you can make yourself a lot less pain in the long run.
Sure, and then you can schedule the maintenance on your time and not on the equipment's time when it gets to catastrophic failure.
But that's where those guys have to talk to the production manager, and they don't always get that permission. So that's you have some customers that you can see the difference. They have a maintenance program that they can utilize, they believe in, it works, and we can see that by charting their repairs in our our system. We can go back and check their history, and you can see that this motor goes 5 years or 10 years between services, and that proof is in the pudding for sure.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that we've seen just in working with you guys over the last few years is that kind of additional knowledge of the motors and the systems like you talked about, and kind of bringing that extra knowledge and I would even say passion. You got a lot of passion for the motors and all of that. So and I think that's had a positive impact on our customers for sure. What would you say? What are your thoughts, kind of looking back over the last couple of years, just working with Cougar?
Yeah. I mean, certainly, you've introduced us to some customers that we didn't know were out there, or improved relationship with ones that hadn't been around as often, and help them understand where we can help them. And so that's definitely created a kind of a full circle effect to where your customers and our customers are now the same, and utilizing both of us for our strengths. And your knowledge of the whole system, whereas our knowledge of kind of the apparatus and where it fits, that gives them a global coverage of their whole operation, so that they can have the kind of performance that they're looking for.
Absolutely, and I think it kind of goes back to what you were saying, that a lot of what you guys are dealing with obviously is massive equipment, and so some of the stuff that we're seeing in the commercial market isn't new or out of your kind of capabilities or anything like that. So kind of bringing that expertise into an area that maybe not is seeing it as much.
Sure. And I know gives you guys the confidence that you can sell larger equipment and know that you've got a service center that can stand behind you, because the more expensive and larger stuff that you sell, you're going to not necessarily get a phone call to just replace it when it has an issue or a breakdown 10 years from now. They're going to want to know, hey Tim, where can I get this serviced? And then we can pick it up and get into it, and they've got a system that they don't have to worry about not having full support, and that they're going to have to be scrapping components, or the only thing that you can tell them is, I'll just sell you a new one.
Right.
And that makes a big difference for all of us.
Sure. And a lot in our market, especially on some of the smaller stuff, ends up being repair by replacement.
Sure.
Unfortunately, just because it's you get to a point where it's just not worth the repair price to do some of the repairs. But definitely once you start getting into the larger sump pumps and the larger, especially when you get on the HVAC side, the larger pumps and motors there, definitely starts to be worth the repairs. So always great to have that resource. And I think we've also got a very similar outlook on the way that we kind of take care of our customers and know the importance of getting them back up and running. And I was thinking about we had a customer that had called in, and I believe it was for a hospital where they needed a replacement motor for one of their CR pumps, the Grundfos, the vertical multi-stage pumps for their pressure boosting system, and we didn't have it in stock. And you guys had the motor in stock and were able to add in the additional bearing, get it out the door, on a rush job. And so for us, that was great to have you guys there to be able to complete that whole circle, like you said.
Sure. And, and even as a, kind of a micro issue within that, to do that modification, you have to know which way the bearing needs to be positioned. You have to make sure that there's enough vertical clearance. You have to have a certain amount of end play so that when that bearing heats up over time, it's a 3,600 RPM application. Just because it's indoors and in a hospital doesn't mean that it's, it's going to have an easy life. It's got to be right, and it's got to be just like Grundfos made it, on the original motor. And, we put those modifications in place, modified the inner cap, and it was ready to go.
Yep, still went out the door with a warranty, right?
That's right.
Yeah, that's great because that, before we started working with you guys, wasn't necessarily an option that we had. And so we either could give them a regular motor off the shelf and say, this probably work for now, right? Or say, hey, we're gonna have to order in something from Grundfos. So definitely gives us another way to get those customers back up and going.
Sure.
So
and then you don't have the pressure on you to stock components that don't necessarily sell that regularly, because they are made special. They do have a certain configuration. They're made to go on that particular pump. So, instead of having to have a extra $500,000 or $1 million worth of inventory that you wonder if you're going to sell, now you just, pick up the phone and call us, and we can make it happen.
Absolutely, yeah. The CR pumps are like an infinite potential combinations of pump ends and motors, so
exactly.
definitely difficult to stock those.
Yeah.
So the other area that's been kind of interesting for us, and I think it's definitely something more common in the municipal market, is the sump pump rentals.
Sure.
So tell me a little bit about your sump pump rental fleet and how you guys got into that.
Yeah, so when we started getting into pumps around 1985 or so, it was just kind of a common thing, I guess, in the pump industry, municipal industry, that due to requirements by the state, you have to have a certain number of pumps in the hole. You have to be able to keep up with the demand. It's this is wastewater coming from residences or commercial properties, and there's always flow. There's nothing stops that water from coming in. And they typically don't overbuild those stations. But when the pump does fail, they have limited redundancy. Sometimes there's a third pump, but it's not. It's more common than not to only have two pumps in a particular station, and so they need that rental pump to be able to keep up with the demand. And so to have a pump on the shelf here typically lands you the repair and the rental at the same time. So then that just kind of snowballed into just a larger and larger fleet, because you want to have more horsepower, more RPM, more coverages, all the different brackets. I mean, there must be 24 pump manufacturers out there for sump pumps. They all have different brackets and a lot of different, but the bracket is usually the key thing. So as long as you have a pump that matches voltage, horsepower, and speed and discharge, you can get a bracket to go on it. Sometimes that requires a special adapter, and we'll do that. Thanks to our machine shop that's here in-house. We buy the material, machine it to match, or adapt, and we get the customer up and running, usually same day, even with making something from scratch.
Yeah, and that's been another thing that's been nice for us to kind of bring to the commercial market. And, we try to have some pumps on hand, but like you said, there's a lot of different potential combinations. So if we don't have it, it's great to be able to lean on you guys to have that rental fleet to be able to get them back up and going when we, try to source the full replacement pump or the repair. Like
that's right. And then there's no pressure on you if it's 8 to 10 weeks for the new pump.
Hopefully it's not.
Yeah, you never know. That's right. Hopefully it's just a few weeks. But what regard, the customer doesn't have to worry about spilling over the top of their sump pit, and getting a whatever it is, $10,000 or $20,000 fine for wastewater on the ground. Nobody wants that.
Right. Nobody wants stinky basements or lobbies either. So
That's right.
definitely don't want that backing up. And we've had similar success with our pump rentals for the domestic boosting, the pressure boosting applications.
That's right.
And very similar philosophy. And it was kind of an organic growth in the beginning of customer calls in, their system was down. I'm like, okay, well, we have this random pump, and let's throw it in there and get it up and going. And now it's a lot more kind of thought put into it and built out the coverage like you talked about. I mean, we can go from, I think you have from 1.5 horse up to over 100 horse, right?
Yeah, we've got all the way up to 168 horsepower now.
Nice. Yeah, and so we're on the booster side. We can cover from a single story building up to a 50 stories of boost.
That's right.
And so we've got that whole coverage across the fleet for the same reason, right? You want to be able to get them up and going within the same day, and then be able to kind of on regular time get that repair replacement done, and keep them up and going.
Which often, that saves there's value there too. Customers not paying overtime, not paying expediting charges. So while some people might be hesitant to think that, well, man, if I'm renting a pump, it's going to cost me more. It's actually still going to cost you less, and you get the luxury of being up and running.
Yeah, and with the domestic boosters, we can plan that first shutdown, especially if it's a planned upgrade. We plan that first shutdown, do the quick tie-ins to bring up the rental, and then the rest of it is done on straight time, like you said, which is is great. And there's not a second shutdown to bring up the system, to get it back up and going. So yeah, a lot of advantages to going with that rental, either for the pressure boosting or the sump pump applications. But again, I think that's just another kind of the partnership that's been great for us to enhance our offering to our customers. And I think you've like you said, you've been working with a lot of our contractors, and I think you've been a great resource for them and helped them increase their offerings as well.
Yeah, definitely.
Nice. So what advice would you have for if you're thinking about the commercial market? We've talked a little bit about it, but or just anybody in general that's kind of maybe in college or kind of getting into this space a little bit. What advice would you have for them in kind of getting their career started?
Oh, wow. Man, I didn't know you were going to hit me with that. Let's see. Man, experience is always, the thing that helps you the most, and it's the hardest to get. So, you can start like you or I did with a college education, or, you can just blue collar it and go straight from high school into an industry, and and try to build your knowledge base that way. So it kind of depends on your career path, but certainly hands on, regardless of the industry, is always kind of the best way to get into anything. So.
Yeah, I think we both had a similar path, like you said. I mean, we did go to college, but at the same time, kind of worked from the bottom up within the company and learned the whole operations and the technical side as well. And I think, like you said, that experience is worth it, and you have to have it if you want to.
Definitely, getting your hands dirty is another way to say it. It's easy to go. You think it's easy to go into an office and sell something out of a catalog, or sell something, a widget. But at the end of the day, if you know how the widget is made, the process that goes into that, well, it just makes you that much more capable, to help the customer and to help your own people. There's going to be, a horizontal or vertical, expansion of knowledge that's going to be, that's going to open up if you've been able to get, some hands-on experience and have a total understanding of how something works.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, like you said, you're going to be able to kind of get in there and identify those issues and help fill that knowledge gap that the customer may have, and be able to diagnose their issue a lot quicker when you've kind of gotten your hands dirty, like you said.
Yeah, I'd say probably the last thing that is the key ingredient. Certainly, an attitude that is positive and and persevering. Just when you get your hands dirty, when you are confronted with new challenges, to kind of to have the right attitude to work through it, to know that you will make mistakes, but then that's where that now what to do next time. There can be a lot of fear trying things that are new or that you don't know. It's easy to kind of tend to stick with what you know, and that's where you can really separate yourself from the crowd, and and that can translate to other opportunities, whether it be a new job or a new career with a different company. But it all started in that trajectory of you were in a certain industry and you tried to learn that much more, and now you're just that much more valuable.
Yeah, and I think that's the positive attitude and the perseverance is just good advice in general for 2020. I think I think everybody will need a little bit of that to kind of finish off this year and hopefully go into 2021 with a little bit better outlook than this year. So kind of on that thought, how has obviously COVID has introduced a lot of challenges just in running operations of a facility like this. But have you seen an increase of failures of equipment because of lack of on-site maintenance, or how has it affected kind of the equipment that you've seen come in?
Number one thing we've felt is lead times from OEMs, producing, whether it be spare parts or new equipment that's been on order. We've seen those lead times affected tremendously. That's some of it's overseas. It's made in Germany, it's made in Sweden, it's made in Italy, and obviously those are parts of the world that have been hit pretty hard.
Yep.
So so definitely delays on foreign made parts and materials for sure. Things that can be had locally hadn't been quite as much of a challenge here. If it originates in the United States. But
Gotcha.
That's so we've been pretty fortunate in that. But we have had to make a few phone calls that. Hey, looks like it's going to be next year, bud, because we just got an update. You can definitely say customers have been affected too. The place, production facilities, they've either, maybe their sales are down, so they've cut back on, crews, so they're cutting back on maintenance, and maybe equipment or entire production lines are shut down. So that equipment, if it's not running, we may get some repairs from it when they try to start it up a year from now. If it's not needing maintenance, then you're less likely to get a phone call.
Sure. So if people are wanting to learn more about what you guys do, or just get some training on kind of pumps and motors in general, what's the best way to get in touch with you guys, or what kind of training and things like that do you offer?
Yeah, for training, we typically like to do kind of a shop tour with a test run, kind of walk them through the process where they see stuff being worked on, and then show them finished product, how it gets tested, what it should sound like when it's running, what it should perform like. Vibration's a real big key component for a lot of equipment. 20, 30, 40 years ago, vibration, if it didn't walk across the floor, that was running smooth. And nowadays the equipment is engineered with a lot less forgiveness. So because the equipment is, for all intents and purposes, less heavy duty, less overbuilt, it's more precision engineering. Equipment has to run a lot smoother. So that's definitely a key data point that really gets zeroed in on, and that kind of all falls back to the balancing and the rotating apparatus, making sure that that's right. Because if it's not running smooth, well, then you're going to have premature bearing failures and risks of winding failure. So those are all things to keep up with. So when they see that here running, that gives them a lot better feel for how it should look when it's brand new. There's a lot of guys that they're around worn out equipment all day every day. So to see things in a disassembled and understand how it goes together, what it should look like when it's like new again, that makes a big difference. And we can show greasing practices, how to use a grease gun. A lot of guys, they might use an automatic grease gun, when that's generally one of the most number one misused and overused pieces of equipment. It's real easy to put half a tube of grease, right, into a motor or a pump, bearing, and now you've actually increased the pressure on the bearing, potentially increased the heat on the bearing, and actually accelerated, the life, leaving that bearing. So
Yeah, we've talked about that with the Grundfos. The newer motors use that real heavy duty grease, and it just does not take as much as you would think, right?
that's correct. Yeah, there's a lot of greases. That's where we talk about, hey, if you don't have what the OEM regreasing schedule is or maintenance on this equipment is, we need to get it for you. We need to you need to have that. You got to know it. I mean, you can bury your head in the sand and watch it fail, or you can perform wrong practices and guess at it and watch it fail, or you just have to actually follow what the manufacturer says you should be doing.
Right.
So it's you have to have an understanding of how it goes together and why it needs to be that way.
Nice.
Yep.
Okay, so you've got a little prop for us here. Tell us about this bearing, or kind of just bearings in general, and their importance in the rotating equipment.
Sure. It's very common that people think, bearing's just a bearing. Get something kind of with that number on it. And if it fits, it's good. Or if that's what was in it, it's got to be right. A lot of times it is, but sometimes it isn't. A lot of times we'll see failures directly related to the wrong type of bearing being in it. You can have everything from a ball bearing when you should add an NU roller bearing for a belted application. That's probably the number one thing we see is a ball bearing where there should be a roller bearing. But simple things from then, all right, well, you ordered the plastic cage instead of the bronze cage. Well, now you don't have the extra capacity to handle that 7-groove 14-inch shiv that's on there that is just dying to crater whatever bearing is on the other end of it. The enclosure can be another thing. A lot of times you have shields, or you have seals, or you have open enclosure. A lot that has to do with how the grease circulates through the bearing. It's either coming in and out of it, getting re-greased, or maybe there's no re-greasing provisions at all. So an open bearing, would be the worst idea you could have, because it's just going to expel its grease and then eventually run dry, run hot, and fail. So, even oils, we've got some synthetic oil right here next to us. That's that makes a huge difference. It's 20 years ago, people just used regular turbine oil, but now there's all these synthetic grades, whether it be in a gearbox or a vertical turbine motor, and having the grade of oil that the manufacturer recommends, to handle the extra capacity load is just critical to have the proper life and performance out of that unit.
Nice. Yeah, and that's way more complicated than I think that we see in a lot of the commercial applications, but definitely can see getting into some of that kind of detail and the kind of specifications like you talked about on the larger equipment, municipal applications, or the industrial applications, productions, things like that.
Sure, I know, because you sell a lot of new units, you trust that whether it's Grundfos or whoever the manufacturer is, they've done the engineering on the front side. But even your CR pumps, they are commonly built with a C4 fit bearing, whereas a C3 fit is the more common. But the C4 allows for a few extra tenths of an inch, of clearance internally, so that when that bearing heats up, from 3,600 RPM speed, that the thermal expansion of that bearing doesn't overwhelm the balls in the cage and the fit, such that then it runs too hot and fails. So they actually take into account knowing that bearing is going to run that much hotter in that particular application, so they have selected a bearing that gives you a little bit better clearance for that.
Nice. So I assume, customers come in and they have that bearing issue. You guys can help them pick out the correct one.
Sure. We look at the whole thing. Sometimes there's red flags. We immediately know. Sometimes, there can be some questions that have to be asked, about the application, and how often it's failing and what are they seeing on their end. And then together, we work together and come up with a solution that, we can all be, on board with and know that we're all, working towards a better, better end product. And most of the time, that is the case.
Will, really enjoyed having you on the show today. Really appreciate you letting us come into your shop and setting up in here and recording our episode. And, in general, just really enjoy the partnership with Northside and how that helps us kind of improve our offering and help our customers. So thanks for being on the show today.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Tim.
Awesome. Well, also want to thank everyone for watching today or listening, and we look forward to seeing you on the next episode of Building Value.